The World Cup is supposed to tell us who the best team is. Then one match kicks off, one favorite freezes, one underdog refuses to behave, and suddenly the whole tournament feels like it has been knocked off its axis. This is not just a list of shock scorelines. This is a breakdown of why World Cup upsets happen, why some of them change football history, and why 2026 could create more of them than any tournament before it. At a club level, a giant can lose on Saturday and fix it next week. At a World Cup, there is no normal next week. 4 years of work can get squeezed into one afternoon, and that pressure changes the sport. The favorite carries expectation. The underdog carries freedom. That is why the same match can feel completely different depending on which badge you imagine wearing. There is another structural reason upsets live at World Cups. Club teams are built over years of transfers, training, and shared habits. National teams are assembled in days. A coach gets his players for a short camp, a couple of warm-up matches, and then the tournament begins. That compression flattens the gap between giants and outsiders. The favorite has more talent, but talent needs time to become a team, and time is the one thing a World Cup never gives anyone. A true upset needs more than a famous team losing. It needs a gap in reputation, a moment of tactical clarity, and an emotional swing that people still talk about later. Sometimes the underdog survives for 90 minutes. Sometimes they score first and force the favorite to panic. Sometimes the favorite creates chances all day and discovers that chance creation is not the same as destiny. Most great upsets share a recognizable anatomy, an early period where the underdog survives without conceding, which plants the first seed of doubt, a goalkeeper having the game of his life, turning routine saves into psychological damage, a set piece or a counterattack, because underdogs rarely outpass favorites, they outmoment them, and finally, a scoreboard that starts to act like a weight. Every minute that passes with the underdog level or ahead, the favorite's legs get heavier and the outsider's belief gets louder. Now the list. 11 results ranked not just by shock value, but by what they did to football afterward. The 1950 result between the United States and England is still one of the strangest stories in World Cup history. England arrived in Brazil with status, tradition, and names people expected to dominate. The United States arrived as a collection of part-timers, men who delivered mail, drove trucks, and washed dishes between training sessions. In Belo Horizonte, a diving header from Joe Gaetjens just before halftime won the match 1-0. The result was so unbelievable that some newspapers reportedly assumed the scoreline was a misprint. The 1-0 did not just shock the tournament. It became proof that football does not care how obvious a result looks before kickoff. What makes 1950 even stranger is what happened next. Almost nothing. The United States went home, the players returned to their jobs, and American football culture stayed asleep for decades. An upset can be a door, but somebody has to walk through it. That gap between the moment and the legacy is part of why the match still fascinates historians. North Korea beating Italy in 1966 is the type of result that still sounds made up if you hear it without context. Italy had pedigree, stars, and 2 World Cup titles. North Korea had almost none of that in the eyes of the wider football world. But in Middlesbrough, something unusual happened. The local crowd adopted the underdogs as their own. Pak Duik scored just before halftime. North Korea defended the lead with total commitment, and Italy flew home to be greeted by furious fans. The Koreans were not finished either. In the quarterfinal, they led Portugal 3-0 before Eusebio dragged Portugal back almost single-handedly. A World Cup match can shrink the gap between countries when one side plays with nerve and the other starts to feel the weight of embarrassment. Algeria beating West Germany in 1982 showed something different. An upset can expose arrogance. Algeria were not there to be decorative opposition. They were quick, brave, and technically capable, with players like Rabah Majer and Lakhdar Belloumi producing football that demanded respect. West Germany were powerful, but they walked into a match they assumed was already won and lost 2-1. The shock was not only the score, it was how clearly Algeria belonged. The aftermath made 1982 historic in a darker way. In the final group match, West Germany and Austria played out a slow, convenient 1-0 result that sent both of them through and eliminated Algeria, a game so cynical it became known as the disgrace of Gijón. The outrage forced a permanent rule change. From then on, the final group matches at a World Cup kick off simultaneously. Algeria's upset did not just embarrass a giant, it rewrote the structure of the tournament itself. Cameroon beating Argentina in the opening match of 1990 is one of the cleanest examples of an underdog changing the mood of an entire tournament. Argentina were the defending champions with Diego Maradona at the peak of his fame. Cameroon were expected to be a side story. Instead, Francois Oman rose for a header that squirmed through the goalkeeper, and Cameroon, reduced to 9 men by the end, defended the lead with a physical courage that made the opening game feel like a warning to every favorite watching. They went on to top the group, and a 38-year-old substitute named Roger Milla danced at the corner flag all the way to a quarterfinal that England barely survived in extra time. After 1990, no serious analyst dismissed African teams again. Senegal beating France in 2002 had the drama of a tournament being rewritten on day one. France were defending world champions and reigning European champions. Senegal were playing their first ever World Cup match. On paper, it looked like a ceremonial opener. On the pitch, Papa Bouba Diop bundled in the only goal, took off his shirt, laid it on the turf, and danced around it with his teammates, one of the World Cup's iconic celebrations. France never recovered. They left the tournament without scoring a single goal, while Senegal ran all the way to the quarterfinals. Hunger can be more dangerous than reputation when the favorite is just slightly off rhythm. Spain losing to Switzerland in 2010 is fascinating because Spain still went on to win the tournament. A scrambled goal from Gelson Fernandez, a disciplined Swiss block, and the most celebrated passing team of its generation lost its opening match. That result shows that an upset does not always mean the favorite is broken. Sometimes it means the favorite has been forced to confront the margins early. Spain learned how thin their control could be, tightened everything, and won every single knockout match 1-0. The shock became the first chapter of a title run, which is its own kind of lesson about how champions metabolize embarrassment. Costa Rica in 2014 were placed with Uruguay, Italy, and England, 3 former world champions, and most people treated them like the team everyone else would beat. Instead, they beat Uruguay 3-1, beat Italy 1-0, drew with England, and won the group. Keylor Navas was a wall in goal. The back 5 defended like the result was personal, and the run only ended in a quarterfinal penalty shootout against the Netherlands. That was bigger than one match. It was a full group stage rebellion built on organization, nerve, goalkeeping, and a refusal to accept that famous football countries automatically own the tournament. South Korea beating Germany in 2018 felt impossible until it was happening. Germany were the defending champions. South Korea were already close to elimination. Yet Germany needed goals, pushed harder, became more desperate, and less space for disaster. Kim Young-won scored in stoppage time after a VAR review, and Son Heung-min rolled the second into an empty net with the German goalkeeper stranded upfield. The late goals did more than win a match. They sent Germany home bottom of the group, their first group stage exit since 1938, and handed the football world a new piece of vocabulary. Even the most reliable tournament machine in the sport can simply stop working. Saudi Arabia beating Argentina in 2022 may be the modern upset people remember first, because Argentina eventually won the World Cup. That makes the story stranger. The team that lifted the trophy began with humiliation. Saudi Arabia played a fearless, almost reckless high defensive line that caught Argentina offside again and again, then turned the match with 2 goals in 5 second-half minutes. The winner, a rising, dipping strike from Salem Al-Dawsari that belongs in any World Cup highlight reel. Saudi Arabia declared a national holiday the next day. Argentina were given a reminder in match 1 that destiny would have to be earned the hard way. Morocco's run in 2022 was not one single upset. It was a whole campaign of belief. They topped a group containing Belgium and Croatia, beat Spain on penalties without conceding a single shootout goal, beat Portugal with a towering header, and became the first African and first Arab nation to reach a World Cup semi-final. Walid Regragui had been appointed coach only months before the tournament. Yassine Bounou turned his goal into a locked door. Morocco did not concede a single goal scored by an opponent until the semi-final. Some upsets disappear as trivia. Morocco changed what future teams think is possible. Before the mechanics, the honorable mentions, because the list could easily have been twice as long. Bulgaria in 1994 did not just win one shock match. They knocked out the reigning champions Germany in a quarterfinal, with Hristo Stoichkov's free kick and Yordan Lechkov's flying header, and reached a semi-final almost nobody had predicted. The United States beating Portugal 3-2 in 2002 dismantled one of the tournament favorites inside half an hour and launched the best American World Cup run of the modern era. Ghana in 2010 carried an entire continent to within one penalty kick of a semi-final at Africa's first home World Cup, denied only by a goal line handball in the final seconds of extra time. Russia in 2018, the lowest-ranked team in the tournament, knocked out Spain on penalties in front of their own fans, and Japan in 2022 beat Germany and Spain, two former world champions, in the same group stage, coming from behind in both matches. Any of those results would headline a normal tournament. At the World Cup, they are the supporting cast. Those are the matches. Now the mechanics underneath them, because the patterns repeat, and once you see them, you watch World Cup group stages differently. When a favorite goes behind, the match can stop being about football and start being about fear. Passes become slightly rushed. Shots get taken from worse angles. The crowd starts to feel impatient. The underdog senses it. The favorite is no longer just trying to beat the opponent. They are trying to beat the story forming around them. You can actually see this on the pitch if you know where to look. Watch the favorite's center backs. When belief is draining, they start hitting long, low-percentage passes earlier in each possession. Watch the body language after a missed chance. Heads turning to the bench, arms spreading in complaint. Watch the substitutions. A panicking favorite makes attacking changes too early, abandoning the structure that was supposed to keep them safe. Every one of those signals feeds the underdog more energy. Underdogs often accept the kind of match favorites hate. They can defend deeper without shame. They can let the opponent have the ball and still feel in control emotionally. They can turn every clearance, tackle, and counterattack into energy. The favorite is judged on dominance. The underdog is judged on survival, and survival can be a very powerful plan. There is also a tactical truth hiding inside that emotional one. Modern favorites mostly play possession football, and possession football depends on rhythm. A compact underdog that refuses to chase the ball denies them that rhythm. The favorite ends up passing in front of the block, not through it. Then one counterattack, one corner, one long throw, and the entire logic of the match flips. The underdog does not need 20 chances. It needs 2 moments and a goalkeeper in form. There is an information war underneath all of this too, and it runs in the underdog's favor. The favorite's players are on global television every single week. Every habit, every preferred foot, every pressing trigger sits in publicly available video. The underdog squad might play half its football in leagues the favorite's analysts barely track. So the smaller team walks in knowing everything about the giant, while the giant prepares against a sketch. Hervé Renard's Saudi Arabia knew precisely how high Argentina's line would step. Argentina learned about Saudi Arabia's bravery in real time, in front of the world. Preparation asymmetry does not equalize talent, but it shortens the odds more than most viewers realize. Speaking of goalkeepers, almost every famous upset has one at its center. Navas in 2014, Bounou in 2022. The goalkeeper is the only position where one player can single-handedly cancel a talent gap for 90 minutes. When scouts try to predict the next shock, the first question is not who the striker is. It is whether the outsider has a keeper capable of stealing a match from a better team. It is also worth asking what happens after the upset because the answers go in very different directions. For the underdog's country, the result can become a generational marker. Senegal's 2002 run inspired the generation that later won the Africa Cup of Nations. Morocco's 2022 semi-final reset the ambitions of an entire confederation. An upset is an X-ray. Spain in 2010 absorbed the lesson and won the tournament. Germany after 2018 entered years of painful rebuilding. The match lasts 90 minutes. The consequences can last a decade. So how do they actually rank? It depends what you are measuring. By pure shock value on the day, Saudi Arabia over Argentina might top the list. A two-time champion with the eventual best player of the tournament, beaten by a team almost nobody outside Asia could name a starter from. By consequence, Algeria in 1982 wins because it permanently changed how every World Cup since has been scheduled. By legacy, Morocco's 2022 run stands alone because it redrew the map of what whole confederations believe is possible. And by mythology, the story that has survived the longest with the least explanation, nothing touches the United States beating England in 1950. A great upset is not one thing. It is a shock, a consequence, and a story, and the very best ones are all three at once. The 2026 World Cup expands to 48 teams, which means more countries, more styles, more unfamiliar matchups, and more group stage narratives. Expansion does not automatically mean more classic upsets, but it does increase the number of places where assumptions can fail. A favorite may face a team it rarely studies. A new nation may arrive with nothing to lose. The new format adds specific pressure points. With 12 groups and the best third-place teams advancing, favorites may face must-win final group games against opponents who only need a draw. Exactly the script that produced Germany's collapse in 2018. The tournament also stretches across 3 countries, multiple climates, and long travel distances, which punishes squads that cannot adapt. History says upsets cluster where favorites are uncomfortable. In 2026, discomfort is built into the map. And there's one more ingredient 2026 adds: host nation pressure on a scale the tournament has never tried. The United States, Mexico, and Canada will play in front of home crowds carrying very different expectations, and hosts occupy a strange position in upset history. They are harder to beat than their ranking suggests, but when they do stumble, the shock multiplies because the whole stadium, the broadcast, and the day itself were built around a different script. Somewhere in the group stage of 2026, a host could deliver the tournament's loudest celebration or become the backdrop for somebody else's miracle. If you want to spot the next one live, here is the checklist. First, look for the favorite that qualified easily. Comfortable qualifying campaigns hide problems that tournaments find. Second, check the underdog's spine. A goalkeeper in form, 2 organized center backs, and 1 forward quick enough to punish a high line are worth more than 10 interchangeable talents. Third, watch the first 20 minutes. If the favorite has not scored early against a deep block, the match changes character. The crowd gets nervous before the players do, but the players hear it. Fourth, respect tournament timing. Upsets cluster in opening matches when favorites are undercooked, and in final group games when the table creates strange incentives. And fifth, watch for the favorite that has been told all week it has already qualified for the next round. Newspapers write those articles. Players read them. The 1950 England squad could tell you how that ends. Some upsets are a strange bounce, a red card, or a goalkeeper having the night of his life. Others are warnings that the world has changed. The hard part is knowing which one you are watching in real time. That uncertainty is why these matches stay alive. They force everyone to ask whether football's old order is cracking or just having a bad day. That is the part of the World Cup that keeps pulling people back. It gives us structure, groups, brackets, rankings, and predictions. Then it reminds us that the sport is still played by tired bodies and nervous minds. The tournament is planned for years, but it can turn on a bounce, a run, a save, a decision, or one player finding courage at exactly the right second. And that is why this story matters for 2026. The next World Cup will be bigger, louder, and spread across more places than any version before it. New viewers will arrive with simple questions. Longtime fans will arrive with old scars. Somewhere in the middle, a team, a player, or a country will create a moment that nobody can fully predict today. So when the group stages begin, do not only watch the favorites, watch the team with the calm goalkeeper, the organized back line, and nothing to lose. Watch how the giant reacts the first time something goes wrong. Somewhere in those small moments, the next chapter of this list is already being written. Subscribe for the next World Cup story.